Good evening, friends. So, friends, let's get started for the day. So, what are we going to discuss? We're going to talk about some topics related to sociology. And again, the way we have curated the topics, right? Some of these things have been recently in news. Some of them, again, there were recent articles in EPW related to that. Apart from that, some other publications were also there. And apart from that, some of these topics are kind of conceptual in nature, right? So both these things we have tried to combine together. And we have topics from paper 1 as well as topics from paper 2. And I remember last time when we had the session, right, there were some doubts that you had and you wanted some topics to be discussed further. So again, I have one topic like that. So before we start, some of the basic admin announcements, right? So where will you find the preparation strategy? Whatever we are studying right now, all these things are getting recorded and it will be up on the portal, right? The link for the portal is also here. You'll have to wait for 24 hours maybe. And apart from that, if you need any help, any mentorship, right, the number is also here. So what are the topics, exact topics that we're going to take up today? These are the topics. First is family planning program in India. So there was this article in EPW which talks about family planning programs in India. So keep in mind here that we are talking about family planning. We're not just talking about population control policies. Right? Usually, like the kind of discussions that we have had in the past, the focus has been on population control. And population control can happen through multiple ways, and one of the route can be family planning. But the focus of this discussion is going to be family planning programs. Family planning has a very specific meaning. I'll talk about that. And we will see what kind of approaches fall under family planning, what kind of interventions are used at present in the context of family planning, what are some of the results that we have achieved over time, what are some of the limitations, what are some of the international level agreements related to family planning, and what would need to be done. Right? So family planning, that is the focus here. It's not just population control policies or population stabilization policies. We are focusing specifically on family planning. That is what we will do. This is specific to Sociology paper 2, population. The next topic, different kinds of tribal policies that we have had. So tribals, they constitute a significant portion of India's population, and there have been different policies, approaches towards the tribal members. Before independence, in fact, even before the colonial rulers were there were different kinds of policy approaches. When Britishers were there were some specific kind of policy approaches. After independence, what kind of policy approaches we have had. So we will go down the lanes of history and we will look at different kinds of policies or for the tribes or policies which have implication on tribes and what has been the consequence of that. And what we will do is we will look at different studies, right? Sociologists, anthropologists, right? They have tried to understand how members of the tribal communities have got impacted because of different policies. We'll also see at different points of time, like after independence, right? What are some of the major approaches that we have had? Community development approach, area development approach, targeted approach, right? What are these approaches? And how does it impact the tribal members? Or how has it impacted the tribal members and what are the present circumstances? So this is what we will do. So if you look at Sociology paper 2, there is one topic of which is impact of colonial policies, and then there is another topic, integration and autonomy. Right? So whatever we are going to discuss will fall under both of these criteria. The next topic is child labor in India. Now, this will broadly fall under again Sociology paper 2. There are certain sections. For example, if you look at the section B part of paper 2, there are certain sections related to industrialization, urbanization, labor, and all those things. So child labor will broadly fall under that. Apart from that, in Sociology paper 2, this last topic that we have, section C, last topic that we have, right? Some of the unintended consequences of the process of development. Right? Maybe in that part also you can fit this topic. Different types of labor, there also you can fit this topic. So child labor in India, what we will do is we'll try to understand who is the child. What is the meaning of child labor? What are the causes for child labor? Right? Again, if I ask you what are the causes of child labor, then you can without even studying sociology, you can say, okay, these are the reasons. These are the factors causing child labor. But keep in mind, whenever you are studying a discipline like sociology, when you are answering questions in sociology, whatever you are saying, you have to back it up with evidence. Right? If you are saying that, okay, poverty leads to child labor, you have to give some evidence for that. Right? Some studies, some thinkers you have to refer to. So we will look at some of these studies. Right? There are people who have done these studies. Poor quality of education can lead to children dropping out of education, which can lead to increasing child labor. There are studies related to that. Poverty can lead to increasing child labor. There have been sociologists, researchers who have tried to study that. So those kind of studies we are going to refer to here. The next topic, lineage and descent. Now, this is something which is very conceptual in nature. Both in paper 1 and paper 2, you will come across these topics. In Sociology paper 1, there is a topic, systems of kinship. Right? So in that, we study lineage and descent. So what we will try to understand is what is descent, what are the different types of descent groups, what are the functions of descent groups, and then we will see what is lineage. And lineage is a type of a descent group. Right? So this is more conceptual in nature. Many times in short notes, you get these kind of questions. And also, if you want to understand kinship patterns and other things, right, these terms you should be very clear about. If you understand these terms, systems of kinship, patterns of kinship, all these things are easy to understand. The last topic that we'll take up is social systems. Now, I remember when we were having the last session, some of you pointed out that understanding Parsons, Albert Parsons, his work is kind of difficult. And again, I completely agree with you. In fact, when Parsons was alive, when he was working, he was coming up with different kinds of research. At that point of time, also people used to point the same thing. That whatever you are saying, it is very complicated. Many of these things are not making sense. So it's not that only you are finding it difficult. People at that point of time, the top researchers at that point of time, his colleagues, right, all of them used to find it very difficult to understand. Many of them have actually criticized it. That okay, whatever you are saying doesn't make sense. Like maybe it is extremely conceptual, the kind of language that we are using is very difficult. So what we will try to do here is we try to take one concept of Parsons, the social systems, and we try to understand what is social systems. And again, I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. So these are the things that we are going to take up one by one. Right? So let's get started with our discussions. So first thing, family planning programs in India. Now before we start, just some images I want to show. Right? So this is one image. Again, it's not very recent. These are all census data. Right? And you all know that we haven't had census in 2021. Right? Every 10 years we used to have a census, but 2021 we haven't had it. Again, what are the reasons? Again, forget about it right now. We can only speculate what are the reasons. We don't know the reasons. So what you can observe here is two things. Right? One is the green line that you can see. Another is the red bars that you can see. The red bars basically show what is the size of India's population at a particular point of time. 1901, 1911, 1921. Okay, so at different points of time, what is the total size of India's population? And you can observe that India's population has been increasing. Right, the red bars, right, they are becoming taller and taller over a period of time. So India's population has definitely increased. Right, it's population in crores. Right, so it has changed over a period of time. Right, so you can observe that. Apart from that, another thing here. I mean, this is the population in crores. Right, so this is the red bar. So somewhere India's population in 2011 was around 120 crores. Right, so this is the number. The green line that you can see here, it tells you about the rate of population growth. Decadal. Every decade, the population changes. Right, so what is the growth rate of India's population as compared compared to 2000s, right? In 2010s, what was the population growth? As compared to 1990s, in 2000s, what was the population? What was the increase in population? That is what is denoted. And you can see that population growth rate, it increased. After some point of time, it is now declining. So India's growth rate in population has actually been declining. If you have studied population in general studies, sociology paper 1, or if you have studied, again, in sociology, if you have studied population, you will be knowing about this. The population growth rate has been declining. And again, this chart is slightly dated, but again, the trend is more or less same. This chart basically shows fertility rates and birth rates, crude birth rate and fertility rates. Fertility rate means, on an average, how many children a female gives birth to, right? And you can observe that fertility rates have been going down. Birth rates, right? At the population-wide level, how many births are happening, that has also been going down. And if you look at the recent number, it has gone down further. So our fertility rates have gone down, our birth rates have gone down, population growth rate, decadal population growth rate, it is also declining. Population numbers have increased. Again, you have a large base, so again, population will increase. Even if the growth rate goes down, growth rate has not become negative. So this is the context, right? The point here is we have made strides when it comes to stabilizing our population. But what about things that still needs to be done? Now, what I want to point out here is we have made rapid advances. We have done all these things: fertility rates decline, population growth rate decline, all these things. But now also there are a lot of women, a lot of couples who do not have access to reproductive and sexual health services. They do not have access to different kinds of contraceptives. They do not have access to different kinds of family planning mechanisms. So that is what we are going to discuss, and we are going to discuss the extent of all these things. Right? So that is the focus area. And again, you'll find that among certain kind of demography, this problem exists. Among those who are, let's say, educated, among them, access to family planning services will be better. Among those who are not educated, illiterate, among those who are poor, these problems might exist. So that's the gist of the entire thing that we're going to talk about. So let's see some of the data points. Let's see some of the areas of concern. Now on the screen, you can look at data, and this is not data specific to India. This is kind of data for all the different developing countries. Now what it says is, in developing countries, all the developing countries taken together, somewhere around 800 million women who are sexually active, who are in the reproductive age category, they want to avoid pregnancy. They want to delay childbearing for at least 2 years, or they want to stop pregnancy. So indirectly, what is the meaning here is around 818 million, 800, let's assume 800 million women, they want to have access to different kinds of family planning methods. All those methods which can limit the number of children, all those methods which can increase the spacing between pregnancies. Right? All these methods are called as family planning methods. So in all developing countries, around 818 million women want to access this. But many of these women do not have access to these facilities. Around 140 million of these women are not using any of the family planning methods. So almost around 1/5 of the women are not able to access these things. In fact, more than that, are not able to access. Around 1/6 of the women are not able to access these family planning methods. Around 75 million women are using some methods, but their traditional methods, they might not be very effective. Right? So there is a demand for family planning methods in developing countries, but significant proportion of women do not have access to these. And some women want to use it, but they are using something which are traditional methods which might not be very, very effective. Another data point, especially it is from different parts of Asia, Southern Asia, Central Asia, Southeast Asia. So the use of modern contraceptives is less than the global average. So again, women, when they don't have access to some of these contraceptives, and only 47% of married women use modern contraceptives. Higher proportions want to prevent pregnancies. So there are a lot of more women who want to prevent pregnancies, lesser women are able to use different kinds of contraceptive methods. So all these things point to the fact that there is a demand for family planning methods, family planning services. But this demand is not being met. Right? So there is what is called as unmet demands. And this is again at a larger level, at the level of developing countries, at the level of Asia, Southern Asia, Central Asia, Southeast Asia. Now, what about the context? What about India? What are some of the ongoing initiatives in India when it comes to family planning? What are things which are being carried out by state governments, by the union government? What are some of the policies that you have? What are some of the ongoing interventions? First is, in case of India, at the present, there is more emphasis on spacing methods. Now, what is spacing methods? See, if you think about family planning, broadly you have two kinds of methods. One is limiting methods, another is spacing methods. Limiting methods limit the number of children born to a woman, born to a couple. How? Methods like sterilization, right? Permanent methods. So as a result of which, after the sterilization process, that particular couple will not be able to have kids. So the number of pregnancies, the number of children are limited. So those methods are called limiting methods. Another kind of family planning method is spacing method. Spacing methods basically help increase the interval between two childbirth. For example, use of contraceptive pills, oral contraceptive pills, for example, use of intrauterine copper devices, use of condoms, right? They help increase the gap between multiple pregnancies. So basically, it prevents multiple number of pregnancies, frequent pregnancies. So at present, the focus is on spacing methods, all those things which can increase the time interval between multiple pregnancies. So that's one first thing. Also, there is a focus on fixed day static services. Now, what is the meaning of this? Different healthcare facilities. It can be a primary health center, sub-center, community center. Governments have been trying to provide for fixed day static services. The idea here is all different kinds of family planning services will be provided. But again, we might not have enough manpower, human resources to provide these family planning services every day or 24/7 or 7 days a week. Rather than that, what happens is it will be decided beforehand that okay, in this particular healthcare facility, family planning services will be provided on this particular day of the week or on this particular day of the month. So you know when this service will be provided. So that service is called fixed day static service. Apart from that, different kinds of tuberculosis services are there is an emphasis on that. These are all sterilization methods, permanent methods. There is also focus on improving the quality of family planning services. Different kinds of quality assurance boards and other things are being provided, which ensure that the family planning, whatever methods are being provided, services are being provided are of top quality. Some monitoring mechanisms are there. Male members' participation in family planning, it is also being promoted. So keep in mind, when it comes to family planning, the involvement of males has been restricted in the Indian context. If you look at the sterilization numbers, right, again, male sterilization numbers is less. Traditionally, that has been the case. Usually what happens is, male sterilization, masculinity, all these things, they get linked with one another. The kind of society that you have, the kind of culture that you have. So there is not much preference for male sterilization. So to change that, over a period of time, right, focus was on female sterilization, now policy interventions are there to change this preferences. So over a period of time, you are trying to increase male members' participation in family planning processes. Home delivery of contraceptives, it's something which is understood. spacing between births that is being promoted, and help of ASHA workers is being taken. ASHA workers, accredited social health activists. These are workers who are at the grassroots level. They provide different kinds of services. One of the services that they provide to people in the community is counseling services, right? So they counsel female members, male members in the community that you should delay pregnancies, right? If recently you had childbirth, then don't have a childbirth next year, maybe have some minimum spacing between two childbirths, right? So ASHA workers are used for this purpose, or they are trying to do these things. Pregnancy testing kits are being provided. Discharge is one of those testing kits which governments provide. Apart from that, supply of contraceptives might be restricted in certain areas, especially the peripheral areas, rural areas, far-flung areas. So you are trying to improve the supply chain here as well. Apart from that, demand generation is also important. Maybe you are supplying contraceptives, maybe you are supplying different kinds of you might be supplying contraceptive pills, condoms, etc. But there also needs to be some form of awareness among the people. There has to be some form of demand also. So there is also an effort made to increase the demand of these things, right? So that people start using these things. Some people might not be using these things. Apart from that, over a period of time, there has been a greater political will and all these things, and new interventions are also being used. So at the present, if you look at our family planning program, all these things are the components. Now, as I was mentioning some time back, what are the different types of services under family planning? One is the spacing methods, I already mentioned. The interval between two pregnancies, right? It is increased. It can be through contraceptive pills, it can be through intrauterine copper devices, it can be through condoms, etc. So these are all different mediums. There can also be permanent methods. For example, female sterilization can happen, male sterilization can happen. Emergency contraceptive pills, right? These are also mechanisms for family planning. So these are all different ways. Now the question is, how has India performed over a period of time when it comes to family planning? At this point, we just saw what is going on, what are the different kinds of methods. But how has India fared from 1950s onwards till now? So if you look at the initiatives India has taken, India was the first country among developing countries to have a nationwide family planning program. Wherever I'm using FPP, it refers to family planning program. So India launched a nationwide family planning program in 1952. It was first of its kind among the developing countries. What was the objective of this family planning program? Read the sentence. Reducing the birth rate to the extent necessary to stabilize the population at a level consistent with the requirement of the national economy. Now, give it a thought. What they are saying, or what they have identified here. If you are having a fast growing population, if the population increases at a very fast pace, it will lead to a situation where the nation might not have enough resources. It might find it difficult to feed its population. It might find it difficult to provide different kinds of amenities to its population. Different kinds of services which the nation is expected to provide, like healthcare, education, skill development, jobs, etc. It might not be able to provide for that. So what they're trying to do is, provide like healthcare, education, skill development, jobs, etc. It might not be able to provide for that. So what they're trying to do is, they want to ensure that population and national economy, they go hand in hand. The population should not be so much that the national economy is not able to sustain it. Right? So that is the reason they want to control population. At that point of time, that was the underlying motive. So you might have a question here, right? Sometimes population can also act as a factor to boost national economy. Right? So that can also be the case. Maybe they have not thought about it at this point of time. Right? Again, maybe certain kinds of ideas were these kind of ideas were back then. But keep in mind, the concern that we have right now, some of the commentators are talking about this, that in future, if you are having low fertility rates, in future, if the birth rates have become very low, if the birth rate becomes negative, then economy might get impacted. Because you won't have people who are working. Right? So depending on the time, depending on the context, priorities can change. At this point of time, there was this fear that the population is increasing at a very fast pace, the economy will not be able to match that. So you have to reduce the birth rate. In 2050, our concern might be something different. In 1952, that was the concern. And in 1952, we initiated the family planning program. And at this point of time, right, it's already almost around 70 years now. Even after 70 years, now also you will find that there are a lot of couples, there are a lot of women who still have demand for different kind of family planning services, but they don't have access to these services. Right? So now also you have all these unmet needs. Considerable percentage of women still do not have access to these services. In case of India, around 13% of the couples do not have access to some of these family planning services. Now, what is interesting to note here is India initiated family planning programs. Some of the countries took up family planning programs later on. China, Malaysia, Thailand, they all eventually came up with family planning programs. But they were all launched later than India. But the performance of these countries was way better than India when it comes to reducing their fertility rate, when it comes to reducing infant mortality rate, when it comes to reducing maternal mortality rate. Right? So they did exceptionally well. Now, how is this the case? India is initiating it first. These countries, right, they are initiating things later on. Again, keep in mind, China had one child policy, countries like Malaysia, Thailand did not have it, right? So don't think that only one child policy is the solution to everything. That might not be the case. So the thing is, India initiated something, but it didn't do as well. But some other countries are initiating it later, but they're doing better. Now, one thing that has been observed here is the kind of approaches that was used. I mentioned some time back spacing methods and limiting methods, right? So these countries, they did something different as compared to India. What they did was they initially focused on spacing methods. Like what, for example, condoms, contraceptive pills, all these things, right? So they are focusing on spacing methods first. And later on, they're moving towards the limiting methods, sterilization and other things. So that was their policy approach. But in case of India, that was not the case. In case of India, our focus was first on limiting methods. maybe that is one of the reasons why our family planning program was not as effective as they. Just think about it, right? We focus a lot on sterilization. In fact, during the emergency also, the focus was more on sterilization. And think about what all happened as a result of it, right? There was a massive backlash. So our approach was slightly different from the approach that some of the other countries took up. Our focus was more on the limiting methods, right? Sterilization methods, and later on we went ahead with the spacing methods. The spacing methods were not really accepted by the society also at that point of time. And the thing is, even now, you'll find that many states in India, they don't perform well. Fertility rates for the southern states, and some of the states which are not the southern states, they have done well. I mean, the fertility rates have gone down, it is below the replacement levels. But some of the big states in India, UP, Bihar, etc., they still have a very high fertility rate, and they are also the states which have a large population. So this is the status right now. Now, when it comes to family planning, there were certain phases where the family planning programs, they got de-accelerated. Right? So you have policies from 1950s onwards, but there were some phases where, again, the momentum that was there, it got broken. So two specific phases were there where this momentum was broken. First was after the emergency, 1975-77, that was the time of emergency. After that, why do you think family planning would have lost its momentum after the emergency? So during the emergency, what happened? One of the priorities that was identified by the government back then was we'll try to stabilize the population, and they went ahead with aggressive population control policies, and they used all the different kinds of limiting methods, right? Sterilization, and there was a huge political backlash as well. Many people were forced into sterilization. They did not want to get sterilized, but since there were different kinds of targets, numbers, they were sterilized. They were forced into sterilization. So after emergency, this became a political issue. In fact, it became an election issue. Nashbandi was an election issue back then. So the new government that is coming up, it cannot be as aggressive when it comes to family planning. Right? So now their focus is not on sterilization, and since they knew that there's a massive discontent, so they are now repackaging family planning, they are now changing the names, they're now trying to make it more holistic sounding, at least that's what they're trying to do. Right? Since again, whenever you think of any policies, right, you cannot ignore the political now. So same thing is happening here. The new government that is coming up, it is sensing what is the kind of discontentment that people have, and it is trying to ensure that this discontent doesn't snowball further. Another phase where all these things got de-accelerated was after the International Conference on Population Development, which happened in Cairo in September 1994. See, when it comes to population stabilization, this is considered to be one of those landmark conferences. Why? Because in this conference, the linkage between population and development was being discussed. What all needs to be done to ensure that population gets stabilized? What all needs to be done so that there will be social-economic development? And again, it mentioned that we need to focus a lot on reproductive sexual health, we need to focus on gender equality, etc. But the thing is, when this particular conference got over, right, now you are realizing that you have to focus on a bunch of other things. Right? Only providing for different kinds of limiting methods, spacing methods might not be enough. Right? You have to focus on women equality, you have to focus on different kinds of reproductive health services, etc. So the focus now became this, as a result of which the focus on family planning methods got reduced. Right? So multiple other things are focused on right now. Women's rights, reproductive health, all these became focus areas now. So family planning, that means the different kinds of spacing methods, limiting methods, the attention to that got slightly reduced at this point of time. So these were the two phases where family planning programs, they got de-accelerated. Now, gradually what is happening over a period of time, different developing countries, they are now realizing that their population, they have unmet needs for all these family planning services. How do we meet those needs? So there was one summit in London in 2012, and in this summit, different issues were being discussed. So the 70 developing countries are coming together, and they're saying that, okay, we will be accepting all these things, we will be taking up all these things, we will be adopting all these things. And these are all targets for 2020. In fact, India also adopted these targets. So these targets were called family planning targets 2020. So what will be the focus area? Whatever is the unmet need for contraception. There's a need for contraception, but some of these needs have not been met. All these unmet needs have to be addressed. Spacing births as well as limiting births, both will be the focus area. You have to provide contraceptive services to somewhere around 48 million couples, and you have to avoid 23.9 million births, etc. You don't need to remember all these numbers. I'm just quoting what all were part of it. Right? The focus was also on reducing infant mortality rates, reducing maternal mortality rates, reducing the number of pregnancies, and whatever is the quality of care. All these things have to be improved. And the focus will be on spacing as well as limiting, but more focus will be given on spacing methods, condoms, contraceptive pills, IUCDs, etc. And India also is one of those countries which is adopting these goals. That okay, all these things we will be focusing on. By 2020, we will be doing all these things. So this was the approach. Now, what is the result? Right? At this point of time, what has been the journey? How does the journey look like? So at this point, if you look at female sterilization, if you look at the different kinds of family planning methods that are used, among them, the share of female sterilization still tends to be very high. Almost around 2/3 of the family planning services that you have, among them you'll find female sterilization, right? If 100 types of family planning services are being used, 2/3 of that will be female sterilization. It tends to be very high. Apart from that, what is important to note here is female sterilization is also not equally distributed. You find that female sterilization tends to be high among those who are from the poorer backgrounds, those who are from the uneducated backgrounds. Right? If you look at women who are educated, among them female sterilization will not be very high. Among them maybe they will be using some other methods. Maybe spacing methods will be used. Use of pills has increased over a period of time. The contraceptive pills. If you look at the two National Family Health Survey, the third round and the fourth round, the use of pills has increased from 3% to 8%. Also, if you look at the fertility levels, the southern states were the first ones to achieve fertility levels below the replacement levels. Unmet needs for family planning, it remains, it still exists. So this number was around 21% and 16% for two different age categories. For the age category 20 to 24 years, it was 21%. For the age category 25 to 29 years, it was 16%. The thing to be noted here is the unmet need for contraception has actually increased 22% and 19%. Right? So that means more couples, they're not able to access family planning services. So there's a difference between 2005 2006 and 10 years down the lane. Right? So this is a cause of concern. There are couples who were not able to access family planning services. The number of couples who are not able to, number of women who are not able to access family planning services has increased over a period of time. Among educated women, again, the access to family planning services is high. Among those who are uneducated, among those who are poor, among them, the access to family planning services tends to be high. So unmet need is high among uneducated women, it is high among poor women. So this is a cause of concern. So this has been the trajectory for India. Right? Over a period of time, we have done better. But now also you have unmet needs when it comes to contraceptive services. So what can be some potential solutions to this problem? So the article in EPW identifies some potential solutions. We just look at one by one. First thing is, you need to have a stronger public health network. At this point of time, we have primary health centers, sub-centers, we have community health workers. But maybe we need to have more health workers, ASHA, ANMs, midwives, right? So they might play a very significant role here. Also, the capacity of these health workers needs to be updated. Maybe we need to provide them with more training, knowledge, etc. Right? So they are at the community. They can help meet some of the demands at the levels of the community. Another thing is, see, with time, technology is also changing. And with the help of technology, you can again achieve a bunch of things. So maybe digital technologies can be leveraged. Right? So technologies can be used to bring about behavioral changes. Constant reminder to people. These are the different kinds of methods. These are the methods which will be available here. In this particular case, you will get family planning services. Right? So technology can be leveraged to provide for constant reminders which can bring about changes in the behavior of individuals. Apart from that, access to different kinds of services at the block levels. Right? People might not have enough time, enough resources to go to a health unit which is far off. So if you have more number of health facilities at the local levels, it is easier for people to avail these services. Again, social marketing and other things can be used to change the demands, right? Demand patterns. Demand for these services can be possibly increased using social media and other things. So these are some possible solutions to the challenge of unmet need for contraceptives, unmet need for family planning services. Right? So this is the first part, the history of family planning in the Indian context. So let's look at a question. What are the salient features of family planning? Enumerate some of the recent initiatives taken by the government regarding family planning. Right? So this can be a straightforward question. In sociology paper 2, you should expect these kind of questions. Right? What they do is they will ask you some concept and then they will ask you something which is contemporary. Right? And you are supposed to link both these things together. Right? So if you have a question like this, let's say it's a 200 words question. So first part, what are the salient features of family planning? Right? You can talk about the different kinds of methods that are there. Right? What is the aim of family planning? Basically, you are trying to reduce the number of children being born, reduce the number of pregnancies, and you are trying to increase the spacing between the pregnancies, spacing between childbirth. Right? So that is the meaning of family planning. Then you can talk about the different kinds of methods, right? Spacing methods, limiting methods, and within that also what are the different kinds of methods. What are some of the features? I already discussed some of the things that are going on right now. Right? What are the different kinds of present interventions? Apart from that, you can talk about how delivery of contraceptives is happening, at home delivery of contraceptives is happening, pregnancy kits, bunch of things. Right? All those interventions you can talk about. Apart from that, what you can also do is, whenever you have these kind of questions, try to link it with current affairs. You might have come across some initiatives by a state government. In some cases, you might have initiatives by local governments. Right? If you have those things, you can link it with this. If you are well versed with India Yearbook or if you are well versed with economic survey, there also will come across different kinds of schemes. If there is a scheme which is relevant to this, you can add that as well. Right? So this part, the second part, is linked with the current affairs part. Right? So when you are trying to answer this question at your home, try to also skim through many other policies, union government policies, state government policies, if possible, local government policies as well. And if it is possible, include them in your answer. Right? So that way again, you will be like that delta better than the other candidates, right? Who would have just talked about maybe one or two policy interventions. So this is about the first topic of family planning. Now, in case we have any questions till this point. Yeah, so some of you have mentioned, some of you have asked about female sterilization, contraceptive pills. See, what are contraceptive pills? These are pills which women take, which again prevents the chance of the female becoming pregnant, right? So, and they have to take it regularly. It impacts the hormones in their body, and which will reduce the chances of her becoming pregnant. Right? Almost, it reduces pregnancy, right? So they don't need to use any other form of contraceptives in that case. So these are contraceptive pills. There's another question: sterilization. Right? Sterilization is you have male sterilization as well as female sterilization. So among females also there can be ways. Again, these are all kind of permanent methods. Now also there are some form of technology by which it can be reversed. So this ensures that you will not be able to bear a child later on. You can just Google sterilization. You have different kinds of sterilization methods. For example, tubectomy will be one. So all these are methods by which female will not be able to become pregnant, right? And usually these are all surgical methods. There's one question: why always women get sterilized? So it's not that. I mean, again, I want to reframe the question. Ideally, right? Male, female, both should equally get sterilized, right? There should not be thing. But think about what kind of society we have, right? It's primarily a patriarchal society, and male sterilization. So again, this is something which is incorrect. Right? Incorrect in the sense these are all notions, these are all commonsensical notions which might not be correct. So male members, some of the male members, not necessarily everyone, they assume or they link sterilization with loss of masculinity, right? Those kind of preconceived notions are there which are incorrect, right? So as a result of which, there is not much preference for male sterilization, and as a result of which, the ratio of male sterilization is less as compared to female sterilization. Surya Narayan, before there used to be, now also copper T is used, that is IUCD, right? Intrauterine copper devices, that's what I mentioned. Sumitra asks, if the growth rate has been going down, then why the population is going to increase? See, growth rate is decreasing, but growth rate has not become negative. I'll give you an example. Let's say this is the population, right? Now, let's say the growth rate of population is 20%. This is year 1. Year 2, the growth rate of population was 20%, right? So the new population in year 2 is 120. Now, let's say the next year, the growth rate decreased. Growth rate, let's say, decreased to 10%. Growth rate has decreased now. Now, what will be the new population for year 3? 120 multiplied by 10% of 120, so 132. So growth rate decreased, but what about population? Population changed from 100 to 120, then it increased to 132. So population has been increasing, but the growth rate has been decreasing. It's basic maths. Siddharth asked, what should be the structure for this question on family planning? Again, it's not very, just think about it. First part, what are the salient features of family planning, right? So first you talk about what is family planning, right? It implies that, okay, either the interval between the childbirths, it has to increase, or the number of children has to be, number of pregnancies, number of child delivery has to be increased. So first the definition. Then you can talk about what are the different features, spacing methods, limiting methods, etc. Right? So this is the first part. Second part, some of the recent initiatives, right? Talk about some of the recent initiatives that we talked about. Then finally you talk about, just give an overall picture, that over a period of time, again, India was the first country to initiate family planning programs. Over a period of time, we have achieved a lot of these things. We have reduced our fertility rates and all those things. But now also there remains unmet needs. This is the percentage of women, 30% of women couples, they do not have access to these things. So over a period of time, we have to address that, and then you can talk about what can be some of the interventions by which it can be addressed. On a positive perspective mode, you are ending the answer. So this is about the first topic. Now let's move to the next question. Next topic: historical perspectives on tribal policies. So the members of the tribal community. Right? So 8 to 9% of India's population belong to the tribal communities. And again, they are in different parts of India. There are certain regions where they are concentrated. For example, the northeastern part of India, or the Chota Nagpur region, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, some parts of Orissa, southern parts of India also, and Nilgiris, Toda tribes, for example. And then in the islands as well, for example, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So we have tribal communities in different parts of the country, and they are the indigenous communities. And we have certain policies for tribal members. And it is not that only after independence we had the policies. Before independence also, we had policies for tribal members. So what we will do is, we will see how the policies have evolved, or how the policies have changed over a period of time. Right? I hope you know the difference between change and evolve. Change means something is just changing. Evolving means something is just becoming better over a period of time. Right? Evolving, right? Becoming better, becoming more progressive maybe. So both the things we'll try to see, whether the policies have changed, whether the policies have evolved. I mean, you can yourself judge what is happening. Now, let's see what was the situation before independence. Right? When the colonial rulers were there, when the Britishers were there in India. What were some of the features of the British policy towards the tribes? Now, I'll come to this, but I'll tell you the context before. See, before the Britishers came to India, at that point of time also you had the tribal members, right? They have been staying in forests, they have been staying in far-off terrains, and they existed even before the Britishers. Now, at this point of time, before the Britishers, they will be staying in the forest, but you also had kings, rulers in different parts of the country. Now, there was minimal interaction between the tribal members and those who were in the mainstream. Sometimes maybe the king is passing through a particular forest, king and his entire contingent. At the point of time, there might be some interaction. There might be some exchange of goods as well. The barter system, all those things are there. But there was minimal interaction. But when Britishers are coming to India, they had some particular objective in mind, right? They wanted to increase their increase trade ties with India. They wanted to access different resources in India. They wanted to make India as one of the markets. So they are initiating different kind of policies, which results in much of things. For example, it leads to loss of tribal autonomy. What is the meaning of this? See, tribals were staying in forests, right? So they were deciding things for themselves. They were ruling. I mean, not ruling exactly, but they were they were not controlled by someone else. And there was not much interaction with the mainstream population. But when Britishers are coming into India, they are trying to administer different regions. So they are now creating different kinds of rules and regulations. So tribal members, whatever freedom they had, they are now losing it. They're losing their autonomy. Britishers are introducing tax administration. So tribal members now have to pay taxes. Before this, there was no such tax. Apart from that, Britishers are now commodifying land in different parts of the country. They are initiating revenue administration. They are creating commodity out of land. Before this, land was not identified as a commodity. This is impacting the tribal members. Right? So what is happening is, some of the tribal members, they are given a new status. They are made to Zamindars maybe. So they are becoming the tribal landlords. But then there are other tribal members who have to work for the tribal landlords. So there is now a class system that is emerging among the tribal members as well. And we'll see how this is something which might possibly benefit the Britishers later on. Britishers are introducing railways, they're introducing roadways. They wanted to harness different kind of resources, extract different kind of resources. How will they do that, right? Only when you have a railway network, you have a road network. And these railway networks are again going to the forest. It leads to a situation where, for the people who are staying in the forest originally, right, they're getting impacted. They have to move out of these places. So it leads to migration of tribal members. Before this, tribals might not have a particular kind of monetary system yet. Now the economy is getting monetized, and they have to be part of this economy. The judiciary and administrative system Britishers are introducing. Tribal members, they had their own political autonomy, they might have their own systems, right? They might have their own rule regulations. But now they have to be part of the new judiciary system, the new administrative system. Britishers are also coming up with excise policy. So if you have to make liquor, or if you are purchasing liquor, right, you have to pay some amount of taxes. If you are making liquor, then you have to pay some taxes to the government. Tribal members traditionally used to make their own liquor. In fact, now also some tribal members will make their own liquor. But as Britishers are coming up with this excise policy, now they have to pay taxes. Previously they were making their own liquor, now for the same liquor they have to pay excise duty to the British government. Also, Britishers are introducing forest policy. We'll come to that. And why they're introducing forest policy and how it is impacting the tribal members. Apart from that, there was this principle of eminent domain. What does this mean? Britishers are introducing policy by which private land can be taken from people for public use without the people's consent. So let's say there are some tribal members who have been traditionally staying on a particular piece of land. They have been cultivating that land. They might be grazing their animals on that land. Now the government can take that land, saying that okay, we'll be using this land for public purpose. And even if the tribal members they do not agree with it, the land is gone. So principle of eminent domain was also there. So all these things are having an implication on the tribal members. As I mentioned, they're introducing forest policy. Now, how does forest policy impact the tribal members? So keep in mind, tribals are the forest dwelling communities, right? Traditionally that has been the case. And they are dependent on the forest for their livelihood. Different kinds of minor forest products they might be extracting from there. So for their survival, they depend on the forest. Now, if a particular policy is introduced, that means, let's say I introduce a policy saying that okay, different kinds of forest products cannot be collected without the forest department's approval. What will happen? Traditionally, those who have been gathering these forest products, collecting these forest products, they will now get impacted because now you have created a hierarchy, and that is what is happening now. So the British are introducing forest policy, and again, when they're introducing the forest policy, the aim is not to protect forest, preserve forest. The way we think of forest right now, at that point of time, that was not the predominant notion, right, among the British. They want to extract different kinds of resources for their own economic needs. For that, they are now creating different kinds of institutions. One of the institutions that they created is Forest Department. So in 1864, the Forest Department was initiated in India for the first time ever. Forest Act was introduced in 1865. So basically, according to this particular law, whatever rights the tribal members had, traditional rights, all these things are gone. Forest Act 1878 is introduced. Now, according to this, forest is now the state property. So basically, state now has a monopoly over forests. So back then, it was a British government. Right? They are the ones who are now having ownership of the forest. They are now having monopoly over it. Others cannot extract forest resources. It is only the state, the British government, members of the British government, agencies of the British government who can now access forest resources. What happened? The tribals will get it back. Because they were now dependent on forests for their survival, for their livelihood. In fact, for example, their health requirements. Right? They might be dependent on different kinds of forest products which will help them. Different kinds of food that they consume. Again, it will be from the forest. Now they're dependent on it. They were dependent on that, now it's gone. So many of the activities that they used to carry out, grazing, collection of fuel, all these things are declared illegal. And in fact, Vallier Elwin, who is one of the prominent anthropologists from India, he said that many of the things that tribal members used to do on a day-to-day basis, they are all considered illegal now. So basically, every tribal in one way or other is violating laws because you have now all those things which people are regularly carrying out, now you're declaring it as illegal. So one fine day, right? Let's say from today the law is going to be enacted. So before today, all these things are regular activities, but from tomorrow, all these things will be illegal activities. So every tribal is going to violate some activity or some law or other. And LP Vidyarthi, one of the prominent scholars, he is saying that all these policies that are there, it is leading to economic, emotional, cultural alienation. Now what is this? Alienation means separation. And all these policies are leading to cultural, emotional, economic separation. Economic separation, you can understand different kind of activities that they used to carry out, raising, collection of fuel, they cannot do that. So economically, they're going to get impacted. Emotional, tribal members might be emotionally attached to a bunch of things. They're staying over there. Right now, they cannot stay over there. So that emotional attachment that they had with the place, that's also gone. Cultural alienation is also there. Many tribal members, they engage in magico animistic practices. They will worship different elements of nature. They will worship different elements of forest. But now they don't have access to that. So whatever cultural elements were important for them, they're losing out that as well. So LP Vidyarthi says, because of the kind of forest policies, economic, emotional, cultural alienation of tribals is also happening. And all these things leads to increase in confrontations. Different kinds of uprisings, revolts, you see. Tribals fighting against the British. It also leads to indebtedness. Previously, their economy was not monetized. Now the economy is getting monetized. Where will they earn money? They don't have resources to earn money, but for different kinds of services, they have to pay for it. If they have to consume liquor, they again have to pay taxes for it. So they are becoming indebted. They don't have money for different kinds of services. On top of that, what is happening? There is increase in middlemen. They don't have money. They will be dependent on someone else. Someone is giving them some loan. But how do they repay it back? They might not have resources for that. So middlemen also, that their participation or their prevalence, it also increases over a period of time. So this is what happens. Now, as the number of uprisings, revolts, all these things increase, the government is now realizing, the British government, that we have to deal with this. Right? We have to find out ways by which we can possibly address this. Because there is massive resentment amongst the tribal members. So now they're coming up with different types of things. They're going for administrative segregation. They're declaring certain areas as excluded areas, modified excluded areas, partially excluded areas. In these areas, other people who are not tribal, they cannot step in. Some of these things are also supported by people like very relevant. Right? So they said that, okay, the culture of the tribal member is different, and their culture needs to be protected. They're anyway lagging behind the mainstream culture, mainstream population. If they integrate with them, then they will be lagging behind. So Verrier also suggested that we should have something like tribal national parks. And what British also did was, among the tribal members, they identified those who can be their allies. So some, for example, the tribal landlords, right? So they kept them on their side. And the tribal landlords ensured that whatever possible hostility will be there, it is taken care of. So Britishers were able to access different kinds of resources. They were also able to ensure that whatever resentment, discontentment is there, it is taken care of, it is reduced. And the participation of many of the tribal communities was not there during the freedom struggle because of the kind of strategy that was used by the Britishers. Right? So elite among the tribals, they collaborated with some of the Britishers. So this is how the policies look like. Now, what is the overall impact of this? So again, different scholars have looked at it. We will look at their work one by one. Right? What is the impact of the colonial policies with respect to the tribal members? Now, when you had this administrative segregation, right, many of the tribal members, their economic life, economic base, all these things got eroded, and many of them were pushed into poverty, some of them were pushed into modern labor as well. Then there were different uprisings that I already mentioned. Coal and Ho uprising, Satara revolt, Santal rebellion, all these things, Munda rebellion, all these uprisings were there against the British. Buddhadev Chaudhary finds out that as there was expansion of railways, whatever isolation was there for the tribal members, it is now changing. So previously the tribal members were isolated, but as railways have expanded, so you now have a new mode of transport. Right? So tribal members can travel to other parts. Members who are not tribals, they can also go to those places where tribal members are there. So over a period of time, it is leading to some form of assimilation, and it is also leading to detribalization of some places. Right? Some places where tribals were there. Now you have non-tribals in those places as well. So assimilation, detribalization is happening, and one of the reasons was expansion of railways. And again, railways was introduced by the Britishers. MSA now says that Britishers also promoted different kinds of other economic activities, mining activities, construction activities. Now in these sectors, tribal members also found some jobs. Again, it was not the top jobs. They worked as low-paid laborers, casual low-paid laborers. Keep in mind the tribal members, right? So now they're part of the monetized economy, and they're indebted. They don't have any of the resources. They do not have any of the base. So they are now becoming part of formal economy, right? They're becoming workers in the mining sector and the construction sector. Wuhan earlier the point, they mentioned that many of them were forced into commercial agriculture. Again, in agriculture also, they're not the farmers here. They're not necessarily owning land. They're the ones who are working as agricultural laborers. And then Britishers also came up with the concept of criminal tribes. Certain kind of tribals, they were considered as criminals. And again, different kinds of harsh punishments, harsh measures were imposed on them. So again, there were laws for that. So this is how the colonial policies impacted the tribal members. Now, when India is becoming independent, at this point of time, there were again different kinds of thoughts, different kinds of questions raised. What should be the policy for the tribal members? On one side, you had people like G.S. Gure. He is considered to be the father of Indian sociology. G.S. Gure was of the view that tribals are backward. So over a period of time, we should ensure that there is greater interaction between tribal members and the mainstream population, and it will lead to assimilation, integration, etc. So this is what G.S. Gure used to talk about. But on the other hand, people like very relevant anthropologists, right, they are of the view that no, tribal members are different. Their culture is different. So they should remain separate. Right? So that was the predominant approach. In fact, very relevant was talking about that national park approach as well. Now, eventually, what is happening is we are going ahead with what is called as the Panchsheel approach. This is something that Nehru talked about, and I've already talked about it in multiple places, so I will not spend too much time on it. Basically, five things he talks about. Keep in mind, Panchsheel approach when it comes to tribal development is different from the Panchsheel approach in international relations. That's different. So what are the basic points here? Tribal people should develop along the lines of their own genius. Right? So you should not force anything on the tribal members. It should be something which is organic in nature. They should develop as per their own genius. Their ownership of their rights over their lands, their rights over their forests, all these things should be respected. Apart from that, we here refers to the mainstream population, should train the tribal members so that they can administer themselves on their own in future. Right? You should not over-administer this region. Till the point of time they are not able to administer it, maybe you help them build capacity. Right? But you should not over-administer this region. Also, how do you gauge tribal development, or how do you gauge the success of different kind of policies programs that have been initiated? By the quality of human character that is developed. You should not just focus on some statistics or numbers, but you should gauge the outcomes. Right? You should focus on the outcomes rather than some statistics. not another approach, similar kind of approach by another scholar, LP Vidyarthi, who had pointed out that during the time of the Britishers, there was economic, cultural alienation of the emotional, economic and cultural alienation of the tribal members. So LP Vidyarthi, he also talked about some of these things. In fact, he was one of the chief architects of India's tribal development policies. So LP Vidyarthi is saying that when it comes to tribal development, the approach should be same as that of community development. So basically, you help the tribal members so that they can participate in their own development, so that they collectively come together to develop themselves. If you have already studied rural development, you would have studied about community development programs, right? This is what India initiated in the first first couple of decades after independence. So LP Vidyarthi is saying that the community development approach should also be applicable here as well, and provide different kinds of facilities, schools, hospitals, irrigation facilities, etc. should be extended to the tribal members, and they themselves can participate in the production systems. Their economy will get integrated with the larger part of the economy, national economy, and in some cases, the tribal members might be displaced. Different kinds of developmental projects, energy projects, etc. might lead to displacement of the tribal members. In that case, they need to be properly rehabilitated. What is rehabilitation? If someone is displaced from this place to another, let's say a hydroelectric project, a dam will be constructed. So there will be certain areas which will now be underwater. So those who have been staying in this area, they have to be moved to some other area. But the kind of ecosystem that exists at this point of time, the same kind of ecosystem should also be there in the new area where they are being resettled. So rehabilitation means when they are going to that new area, they should have all the facilities that they had here. Maybe here they had a school, they had a primary health center, they had some irrigation facilities. All these things should also exist over there. So that is rehabilitation. If you are just saying go to that area, we'll give you some amount of money, that is resettlement, or there is just providing some compensation. Rehabilitation means you are creating the entire habitat that existed. So LP Vidyarthi is saying that there has to be rehabilitation for those who are dispersed, and they will benefit from the different kind of developmental programs rather than being the victims over there. And some of the tribal members, some of the tribal communities, they are on the verge of extinction. The number of members in these groups, that is very less. They might be vulnerable to different kinds of diseases, etc. So we have to take proper care of them. Integration is possible. The integration is possible by all these kind of vibrant tribal policies. So this is what LP Vidyarthi suggested, right? This is how the tribal development process should take place. Now let's see what all happened after that, right? At different points of time, in different decades, what kind of approach was used. All these things are there in the notes as well, right? The handouts that has been given to. First is, we went ahead with tribal development projects. So in 1954, some 43 special multi-purpose tribal development projects were initiated. But many of the things that were taken up here, they were very general in nature. It was not something just specific to the needs of the tribal members. We're saying that it is a tribal development project, but not much was there in that. So it was not very successful. Now, next thing that was used was creation of tribal developmental blocks. So those places where there is high concentration of tribal members, where the population was more than 60%, like if you have 100 people, more than 66 were tribal members. So you had certain policies targeted for these areas. So initiated in third 5-year plan, and by the end of the fourth 5-year plan, you had some 504 tribal development blocks, and it covered nearly half of the tribal population. And again, in these areas, you had some specific policies. Now, in the initial years, these were the projects. Now, again, here also, you did not have complete success. In case you had the entire population almost tribals, in that case, the benefits accrued to the tribal members. But in case there were tribal population and non-tribal population, so the non-tribal population benefit. I mean, this was all the analysis that was done after the projects, and different kind of strategies were used by the non-tribal members to accrue the benefits that were supposed to be for the tribal members. Over a period of time, different committees were formed. Weber Commission, Shiloh Committee. They're all saying that instead of focusing on area development approach, till this point of time, you're going for area development. You're identifying that okay, this is a particular tribal block, and the entire area will have some schemes and policy. They're suggesting that this area development approach is not working. Maybe we should go for more targeted approach. Benefit should only go towards tribal members. Don't focus on the entire area. If you're focusing on the entire area, those who are non-tribals are getting benefited more than the tribal members. The non-tribal members are finding out ways by which they can take the benefits, which is supposed to be for the tribal members. So some of these committees that were formed, they suggested that you should go for targeted approach. Only for tribals have some benefits. Now, from the fifth 5-year plan onwards, the approach is now again changing. So every 5 years you have the plan. Now from now onwards, within the plans you will also have sub-plans. So within the plans, you will have a plan which is specifically for the tribal members. So fifth 5-year plan onwards, the sub-plan approach was there. And here again, different kinds of strategies were used. If a region has substantial tribal concentration, area development approach will be used. If the region has dispersed tribal population, you will use both area development approach as well as targeted development approach. If extreme backward region is there, then you will have some special programs targeted to that areas. So mix of programs. If large concentration of tribal members, go for area development. If tribal and non-tribal members are there, then go for area development as well as targeted approach. And then if it's an extremely backward region, again specific provisions for that. So this was the policy that was used. But despite that, problems continue to exist. The tribal problems did not get resolved; it persisted. So some committees were formed after that, and they tried to understand what is the extent of problem, what are the problems that exist right now. So there was this Shiv Raman committee. It found that there is increased incidence of landlessness among tribals. If you look at the tribal members, right, they do not have access to land. And you have different kinds of policies which prevent transfer of tribal land to non-tribal members. If land is owned by tribal member, it cannot be transferred to non-tribal members. There are multiple restrictions. Sale of land, tribal land cannot happen to non-tribal members. But despite that, sale is happening. How is it the case? For example, different kinds of loopholes exist. And these loopholes are used. For example, in Maharashtra, tribal member can sell the land if he is medically unfit to cultivate. So if there is a certificate, or if someone proves that this person is medically unfit to cultivate, the land can be sold by non-tribal member. There was another study carried out in Andhra Pradesh by the study. 51% of tribal land in Andhra Pradesh is under the control of non-tribal members. So basically what is happening is, land is on paper a tribal land. But who is using it? Someone who is not tribal. So 51% of the tribal land is under the control of a non-tribal member. So the point here is, you have different kind of policies which are trying to increase access, which are trying to at least ensure that landlessness will not happen. But despite all these things, landlessness continues. So these are the findings. Now, just two other findings I want to talk about, and then we'll look at what is the implication of all these things. Now, another study by Walter Fernandez. Walter Fernandez finds out that among tribals, displacement is quite high. Among tribals, land alienation is quite high. Finds out that of those who are getting displaced because of different kinds of projects, 40% are tribals. If let's say 100 people are displaced, 40 are tribal members. But what is interesting to note here is, if there are 100 people total in a population, just 9 are tribals. 9% of India's population is tribal. But out of those who are displaced, 40% are tribals. Which implies that whenever there is any development related project, tribals are more impacted. They are likely to be displaced by these projects. So that is something which is a cause of concern. And he finds out that in some cases, this number can be even more, 70%, 80%. There are some states, right? Whoever have been displaced over there, out of that 70% are tribal members. And what is even more concerning is, it's not just displacement. If people are getting displaced and they are given some form of compensation, they are rehabilitated, it's not a problem. But in most of the cases, they're not even rehabilitated. For example, in Orissa, some 2.6 lakh people are displaced in different kinds of projects. For example, the Router Steel Plant. 2.6 lakh people are getting displaced, but hardly some 9,000 people are provided jobs. And also, many times what happens is, people will be displaced, they will be provided some land for that, in exchange for that, so that they will move to some other place. But the land that is provided to them, it is of inferior quality. And also, whenever they're moving from one place to another, the culture gets, whatever culture they have, right, that gets impacted because tribal people are associated with the culture around them. So these are all the different kind of concerns which are flagged by Walter Fernandez. Another study, again, by a Romanian sociologist, anthropologist, he finds out that landlessness, homelessness, marginalization, joblessness, increased prevalence of diseases, food security, loss of access to food, these are all features of tribal members. The kind of policies that the government has taken up has resulted in all these things. Whenever displacement, whenever any project is taken up, whenever there is any displacement, common property rights are not taken into consideration. Let's say a tribal member is staying here. Let's say there is a lake here. There are multiple tribal members here. Now, traditionally, right, they will be dependent on this common property resource, on the lake, for their survival, for their livelihood. But when they move from this place to another place, right, so they might be compensated for the land on which they were staying. But all the benefits that they were possibly getting from here, they're losing out on that. This is a common property right. So that becomes a cause of concern. They're becoming impoverished because of this. Like, this common property resource was a way by which they could have survived. They would have had a source of livelihood, which does not exist now. Many times the price that is offered for the tribal land that is below the market price. And many of them do not have education, they do not have entrepreneurial skills. Right? So whatever money that they get as compensation for the land that they're losing out on, that just gets spent because they cannot multiply that amount of money. They don't know about, they don't know about the different ways by which the market is operating. And many times they're not even informed before this land is acquired. Someone else gets to know beforehand that the land is getting acquired by the government. So what they will do, they will first purchase the land from the tribal members. The prices of the land will go up, and then they will sell it to the government. So they are at the receiving end. So the elite get information, they purchase land at cheaper rate from the tribal members, they will sell it to the government at higher price. So this is what was again found by another anthropologist. So this is how tribal members have been impacted by the different policies. Again, it's not that only these things have happened. There have also been different other policies. For example, in the last couple of decades, right, there has been an increased focus on education of tribal members. There have been a focus on increased access to healthcare facilities. Different state governments have also taken initiatives. But the thing is, because of some of these approaches, right, tribals have been dissatisfied. Tribals have questioned the role of the state. They have questioned the role of the government. And again, the apprehensions they have has taken up different forms. In many cases, there have been instances where they have demanded that they have greater autonomy, political autonomy. They have demanded creation of states. Look at the northeastern part of India. At some point of time, we did not have these many states, right? There were demands for states, creation of states, demand for political autonomy. In fact, in the mainland of India, again, at some point of time, we had one state of Bihar, but again, the southern part of erstwhile Bihar, again, which has significantly large tribal population, they had greater demand for political autonomy, led to creation of state. Many times, they have also demanded protection of their own culture. There's a fear that they might lose out on their culture. And sometimes there have also been resistance, opposition to the aggression, excess of the state. Many times, tribal members have been wrongly accused of different kind of offenses that they might not be engaged in. So this resentment is also expressed from time to time in forms of different kinds of protest. So this is how the policies have changed over a period of time, and this is how the consequences of the policy looks like. And as many recent studies that I have provided you here, right? So, and keep in mind, we have provided you the handouts. It has it. Apart from that, what you can do is you can refer to Sociology paper 2, the videos. There are two topics on it. There are two modules on it. One module is on colonial policies towards tribal members. Another module is education and autonomy. Right? So there also you'll find some of these things. Discuss the tribal policy of government during pre and post independence. Right? So again, whatever we have been discussing till now can be included here. Again, keep in mind, you have to answer these questions with 200 words. So you should not be going into each and every details here. You can talk about the broader points. For example, before the independence, what kind of policy was there? It was more about invasion, appropriation, isolation. Right? This is how you can define the policies that was there before the Britishers, before the independence, during the time of the Britishers. And you can give some instances. After independence, what was the policy? Again, there were different thoughts at that point of time, and then you're going ahead with the Panchayat policy. And here again, you can talk about what kind of approaches were used. At some point of time, it was thought about the thought that we should go ahead with community development approach, LPVDRT. Then we went ahead with area development approach. There were some limitations to that. Then you focused on targeted development approach. Then you can talk about the modified development approach. So the broader points you have to talk about. What was the policy approach? And then you can give some examples, and then you can mention about what is the broader implications of these things, and then you can end it. So this is about tribals, the tribal policies that we have. Sumitra has a question. If the Indian government is trying to try to ensure that the tribals are back in the mainstream society, is it not an interference with isolation? Yeah, I mean, and isolation, the government is not promoting isolation anyway, right? Isolation was something which was thought about by very relevant at that point of time, but we didn't go ahead with that. What we said that tribals should have their own, I mean, they should develop as per their own genius, and there should not be any restriction. If tribal members want to participate in the mainstream society, they can. In fact, we have so many policies for that. We try to promote affirmative action for tribal members so that they can participate in the political institution, they can participate in the education institution, they can participate in the economy. So the isolationist approach, we're not going ahead with that.